If you didn't prep for this, we can skip it. Otherwise, I like to ask people, if you were a character from a book, who would you pick?
Yeah.
Or a movie. It could be anything.
The Anna Green Gables. I know that's so girly, but that's who it would be.
No, that's cool. You're the second person, I think, who's picked that. Why Anne? What is it about Anne that inspires you?
Well, so I watched all the old, like 1989, I think, movies with Megan Follows, like when I was a child. Then I started reading it when I was like 12 or something, and I just resonated with how she perceived the world. I mean, not quite as beautifully. Her thoughts are like out of this world. I love it, but I don't know, the way also the author, Lucy Ward Montgomery, describes nature, that really resonated with me too. So it was just a delight to read just her descriptions. But then Anne herself is such a fun, really thoughtful character. And I think a lot. I probably overthink. So it just sort of fitted. And I've always loved her books. And I've read lots of books, but those ones have always been sort of my favorite. So
Amazing.
that's who it would be.
Well, that's cool. Welcome, everybody, to the Catholic Author Show. Today, we're joined by Madeleine Carroll from the UK. I think she's our first guest from outside the United States. Actually, I take that back. Our first guest was from Portugal. So there we go. We're back over to Europe again.
Cool.
Madeleine is a Catholic homeschooling mother, catechist, and author, and she has self-published a number of children's novels. You can hold them up at any point if you're watching this on YouTube, but we will talk about all of those very, very soon. Good to have you with us.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
So
really
this show is it's about fiction for modern Catholic authors. We talk creed, craft, and co-creation, rooted in grit, grace, maybe gods and dragons, probably not so much today. I'm your host, Dominic, novel lover, all-around creative, founder of Catholic Author. We're here to inspire your faith and your fiction. And if you write children's novels, this is going to be, I think, an exciting little series of insights into how Madeleine likes to create. So why don't we start with your origin story? What's your background, and how did you get to where you are today?
Thank you. So I was homeschooled all my life in the UK. I'm one of 6 children, and I've always loved reading, obviously, but I've always loved picture books. Particularly, there is an amazing author who recently just died that I really loved. Her name is Shirley Hughes. I don't know how well known she is in the US, but she created very beautiful, very realistic images and storylines around just children and everyday life, normally in London. So there'd be a lot of sort of typical London scenes and little back gardens, and just very English. And also just the kind of craziness of home life. She captured it in her pictures. So I always loved children's books. And then when I was like a young adult, maybe 18, 19, one Easter, I wrote my first, I always created in my mind little stories about elves and gnomes and things. But then when I was like a young adult, I created this more serious, very short story about Easter, where Mary, the Mother of God, meets Jesus in the resurrection garden. And that was my first sort of story. And I kept it just on the shelf for years. I met my husband, we got married and had 6 children and started homeschooling them. But in the back of my mind, I always wanted to do something with this story. And then with future stories, we have a beautiful National Trust common ground near us, where there's lakes and all sorts of wildlife. And when I walk there, I write, and like in a little notebook, and now on my phone. And I wanted to do something with these, and I wasn't really sure how to do it. And then so I approached different publishers, and a lovely small publishers in the UK, Second Spring, took my story, The Joyful Meeting, about Our Lady meeting Jesus, and published it. And we also did a Christmas one, which they also made into a colouring book for children as well, making it kind of catechetical. And then I read Jennifer Fulwiler's One Beautiful Dream, which is such a brilliant book about a mum, also 6 kids, trying to follow her passion for writing and like bring up crazy amount of children. And it just inspired me to keep on running this sort of parallel life of having a blue flame, which is writing. And it kind of gives me energy then to do my main vocation as a mum.
Beautiful. What is that? You said a blue flame? What is that? I don't know that.
So this is Jennifer Fulwiler's big thing. After she wrote One Beautiful Dream, I think before she wrote One Beautiful Dream, she wrote a book called Something Other Than God, and it's her journey to Catholicism from atheism. Then she wrote One Beautiful Dream, which is being in the muck and mire of like motherhood with lots of young children. She had them very close together, and also health issues, which I've also suffered with. So sort of I really resonated
Oh, I'm
with her in
sorry.
that. And then it's fine. And then she wrote this book called what was it? Your Blue Flame, and it's about finding what makes you tick, like what your creative flame is, basically, that makes you just feel energized. And it's often not about earning money with it. It's sort of like a hobby, sort of like something that beautifies the world and gives, I think she describes it, she does it much better than me, beautifies the world, gives glory to God, and makes you feel joy.
Is there a significance to the color blue, or is that the most focused, hottest burning fire versus yellow and orange?
I don't know. She probably said that, and I just didn't pick it up, because that book, I've read her other books. I've got like physical copies because I love reading books. But that book, Your Blue Flame, I think I listened to while I was doing jobs, and I probably just didn't pick it up. But I'm sure there is a good significance for it.
Okay, so tell us about your books then. So that, did you ever do anything with that first story, or maybe just hold up briefly some of the ones that you've published?
So The Joyful Meeting, the Second Spring, published, and then I wrote a few kind of not specifically Catholic ones, just more about nature, and a little. Sorry, this is my dog-eared copy that the children read. Joyful Colours of the Year was published by Quis Deus Press, which is a little tiny family press in America, and their daughter illustrated the amazing pictures.
Wow,
and it's
look
following.
at that.
I mean, it's just so lovely. And she's American, but these scenes are very English, which I just don't know how she did it. She's really clever. It's basically following the seasons through spring in like a rhyming, sort of a very short rhyme, through summer, and then autumn. I love this one, and then winter. This is my favorite picture. Of that one. Wow. Full moon, beautiful. Silver cloud, crashing sea, blue and loud. So that was one that was again published by another little publishers. And then I've branched out, and I am under Isaiah Books, which I created. I have like teamed up with a lovely local Christian printers nearby. They're a family of 9 children, and it's the father and son. One of the sons runs this lovely printing company, and they print my most recent books. So this is one that came out last Christmas, and the same illustrator is going to do this Christmas's new book as well. So this is like a take on the Good Shepherd, but it's also a shepherd who's lost his sheep, and he finds his sheep. So the lost shepherd, the parable of the lost sheep. So he goes out one night in December to find his lost sheep. He finds it. He goes back to party with his friends, and he can't find them because they've all run ahead to Bethlehem to meet baby Jesus. And then he finds baby Jesus. So it's kind of like a twist on the parable and the nativity story. So these are really exciting, these ones, because I'm trying to make a series with this illustrator who's a lovely American guy. And he's currently working on the newest book that will come out this Advent.
Amazing. Wow. So what is your process then for creating these new stories, apart from taking these lovely walks that you've described? But how do you come up with the ideas? Is it being surprised by something, or you come up with a character first, or an idea first? Well,
it's a funny one, but some of my later stories have been born out of really difficult times, actually, in my life, and it's funny how God works, isn't it? So this story actually came out when a friend that I knew many years ago lost his wife suddenly, very young wife. And I remember just walking and just pondering, leaving young children behind, and just pondering like the whole mystery of life, death, and grief, and young children, and trying to work it all out. And then out of that came this story in particular, because Ephraim, the shepherd, it starts off with him often being anxious about life and trying to work out his purpose, but he's going to keep persevering and praying, even though he's very dry. And that was how I was feeling at the time. So sometimes my books come out of experiences. Sometimes they come out of when I was young and I used to say the rosary, I always needed pictures to help me stay on track. Otherwise, I'd be really distracted. And so I would look at really beautiful different pictures in books of the different mysteries of the rosary. I'd find things online. And that sort of spurred my interest into writing biblical type stories, which I've written a few of now. So the process is different with different books. Sometimes it's just remembering some beautiful artwork. Artwork is really important for me. So when I find my illustrators, they've got to be right, like really perfect for the text. And the artwork of the inspiration of previous artwork that I've seen in galleries or online often feeds into the inspiration for writing the books. It's kind of interesting. Yeah.
Beautiful. Wow. And then you have a number of your own children. Do you end up coming up with ideas for new stories just out of interaction with them, or realizing
Yes.
there needs to be a children's story around this one way to talk about something?
Well, it's really interesting you say that because, again, born out of some challenging times, my fifth child has, we're not really sure. We think maybe like developmental delays. She's definitely got some struggle in speaking. My boys have speech delays too. It's kind of in the family a little bit, but she's our only daughter that has quite severe speech delays and also other developmental delays, and also kind of hyperactiveness, ADHD type symptoms. And when I watched her and tried to work out how is this little gorgeous little person going to fit into the world, especially like taking her to maths and she's climbing all over the pews, and you think, oh my gosh, it just doesn't fit the mold, and and she's tall for her age, so she looks much older than she already is, and I think mentally her age is delayed anyway. So this latest book that is coming out this Christmas is about the little drummer boy from the Christmas Carol, the drummer boy, and he is just all over the place and he's constantly hitting his drums, and he's sort of like, one of the pictures is him sort of soaring in the air trying to keep his baby sister occupied by catching stars from the sky, all the sort of things that my little girl is just a whirling dervish. And I wanted to sort of help myself process the fact that she's different and that we're going to be working with her on that, but also the fact that she's a gift. And just like this little boy in the story is a gift, he's using his noise. So the title of this new story is going to be called A Joyful Noise, One Silent Night. And again, it's based around the Christmas night. And that's the point, like you can be joyfully loud and that gives glory to God too. So that one is definitely inspired by my daughter.
Beautiful. That's beautiful. Well, tell us about Isaiah Books then. What are the plans for that? How does that work? Is it primarily your own work, or do you also invite or involve other contributions?
Yeah, so it's mostly all my own books, but just this year we had an exciting contribution, and a really lovely author, Roy Peachy. He'd written, so I homeschool my children and I do a Catholic American curriculum with them called Mother of Divine Grace, and he had written some beautiful stories about British saints to be used in this curriculum. But when I got it, it was just A4 sheets. There was no pictures or anything. It was just literally A4 sheets, one A4 sheet per saint. And there were really beautiful saints of the Protestant Reformation in England, saints from much earlier. It was the whole British Isles. So you had St. Patrick from Ireland, St. David from Wales, St. Andrew from Scotland, and then lots of Reformation saints. And I saw like a gap in the market. I was like, we don't have saints of the British Isles made into a book like this. We need this. So I approached him and said, would you like to team up with one of my illustrators, and we make this into a book, but we also make it into a colouring book at the end. So there's going to be 33 British saints with beautiful coloured images and the story, like kind of opposite pages. And then at the end of the book, there's going to be the same images, but just in black and white with thicker lines to colour in.
So fantastic. Nice.
And so that's our first outside contribution, and they're selling quite well. People are interested, and they're quite educational. And he's a brilliant author. He's very fun as well.
That's wonderful. I'm curious to ask about the process that you follow for producing a book, and then collaborating, with an artist, and then. So what does that process look like for you? Do you just write it all ahead of time, then send it over to them, and then they send you back, here's where I think it could be blocked out? Or what kind of back and forth is it like now that you've done it so many times?
It's really fun, and it's slightly different with different illustrators. But what I tend to do is I write the story and I got it all ready, or nearly ready to go. And then the really fun bit is going on like Instagram and Facebook and finding. I mean, I have a good core group of illustrators that I basically go back to now. But at the beginning days, I would be like finding amazing artists online. I loved it, and I could see them if they could work with with my work, and I would approach them. Some of them, it wasn't a good fit for them, but others it was. And then they would take my story and then they would just create these pictures. Usually they do sketches for me to have a quick look at, and I'd say, yeah, that's great. And then they'd fill them out, or they'd create beautiful artwork. My big focus is I like to try and have things as realistic as possible. So I veer further away from cartoons, because I think they have a really good place. Cartoons, graphic, comic type things have a really a real place. But for me and my style, I think it's more realistic art I'm looking for.
Right.
So I look at that. So then they collaborate with me on that. We get these lovely images and work all done together. And then what I tend to do is I send sort of JPEG files and the Word documents to this lovely printer in Leatherhead, just down the road. But his son is also a graphic designer. Is that the word?
Okay.
Yeah, graphic designer. And he formats it for me. So he gets really good backing color for the pages. He gets the font great. He just, because I'm really technophobic. So he does all of that.
Okay.
And then I get the ISBN numbers, I get the dedications right, and the back cover blurb. I get it all sent to him, basically in an email, and tell him where to put it all. And then he creates this file online, and then we send it off to the printers, and then it comes back. And there we go.
How fun.
Yeah.
What kind of, since you're writing primarily children's books, how long does it take you to produce one? Do you have like a backlog of ideas you'd love to work on one day, or is it kind of just this one idea at a time, and then there's a fallow period as you're reflecting on something else, or how does that work?
So, life's getting busier and busier with the homeschooling and now with the special needs of one of my children. So it's hard because I do have a lot of ideas and a lot of stories, but what I tend to do, I've tried to give myself time. So I give it 6 months usually per book. And that they can all be worked on really well and produced as best as I can. And I'm still an amateur, really. It's not going to be, perfect quality, but I give it 6 months. So even though I've got like stories that I may have written, they're not edited or sorted out. They're just going to be on my computer, ready to go in the future. And then I just work on a book for 6 months. It's usually around Easter and Christmas, a lot of my books come out. They're based around those feasts generally, or I can fit them in around those feasts because that's when a lot of people buy, which is helpful to get the money back. So that's how I kind of work it, 6 months. And I do have projects that I want to eventually get to as well, but it's just going to take time.
Sure. And then since you're self-published, and it sounds like you're doing a lot, not only a lot of your own project management, but you're doing a lot of your own marketing as well. And I'm curious what that is. One, what is that like for you, and what's the feedback been, and maybe building a mailing list or a community of people who enjoy your work, families who read to their children, that sort of thing?
Yeah, everyone is very kind, like the friends that I have around. I mean, that is definitely my weakest spot. Okay, so I'm definitely not a marketer. And that's why, traditional publishing is a lot better in lots of ways. And some of my books are traditionally published, and that's great just to hand it all over to them, and they deal with the selling and stuff like that. But I am slowly gaining a core group of sort of supporters and followers on Instagram and Facebook mainly. I also do have an emailing list, though I do that less. Life is so busy. My marketing often just looks like an Instagram post every 4 days or something like that. It's hard, and I am trying to discern how God wants me to work that one out, because marketing is important. I need to sell more books to cover the costs of like printing and things. So got to work on that one. We're just going to have to see how that one's going to play out. But it's still a bit fun, sending off an Instagram post with an image of the new book coming out is fun. And, I don't have a huge following at all, but the feedback I do get is sincere and they're kind. And people do seem to be enjoying it. There does seem to be, and we have a few bookshops in England now regularly stocking some of my books, which is really nice. So that's really encouraging as well.
Yeah. Well, that's fantastic. I think we'll start to wrap. Where can people find you online to check out your books and maybe purchase one? Where can they find you online?
Thank you. So my website is isaiahbooks.co.uk. And some of my books are trickier to send internationally, but I usually can manage it. So people do want to, some of them are fine to send out to US, for instance, but I can usually manage to get all mine out to whoever. Just DM me, like send me a message. My email address is on the website too. Please do feel free just to email me, and I can get back to that pretty frequently. I check my emails. And then on Instagram, it's Isaiah Books Madeleine Carroll, just the name of my business and the name of me. And then the same on Facebook, I think. It's Isaiah Books. Yeah. So there we go.
Good. And I assume all those are linked on your website. People can find them. Yep, I see them in the top right corner.
They should be. I got someone to do my website for me. I should double check that. It's a really nice website, but they should be. But anyway, you can always email me. That is sometimes the most easy way to do it, and then I can work things out for people.
Beautiful. All right. Well, I'd love to ask you the last question. And for those who are just who have never heard of this show before, what Catholic Author is, it's having conversations with people like Madeleine. It's about building up a community that is a friendly place to give and get feedback, share works in progress, and build a network of supportive friends, primarily around those who love their faith and are eager and interested to write faith-inspired fiction. So come and check us out at catholicauthor.us. If you had 1 minute, Madeleine, to share a word of encouragement to Catholic writers, either children stories or not, what would you want to share with them?
Just go with it. Just do it, because it can seem overwhelming and scary. But if you just take that tiny step, and I honestly think, like Blue Flame, remember that God gives us gifts not to hide under a bushel, and we can start really small. It doesn't need to be really successful. I remember my husband Connor always says, if one of your books has given joy to one child, that is enough, and that is success. So that's what I'd say, I think.